But coming back to the main issue, which I think is the funding bill, as you may well know, we've had initially universities or tertiary institutions being funded through what we used to call the DUC system, that is the differentiated unit cost. This particular cost, particular system was an agreement between government and institutions that government would support institutions or students to the tune of 80% of the program costs. But because of difficulties in getting resources from the exchequer and from government, the government was only able to support institutions for many years up to the extent or up to the percentage of 37 to 40%, which led a number of our institutions to go into debt. And as of 2022, the debt that the universities were facing was almost 67 billion. The government then, this administration, came up with the new funding model, which was student-centered, which had percentages and which was based on the MTI. That means the means testing instrument. Now, what was happening in this one was that you undertake the means testing instrument where you indicate or you look at the economic capacity of the parents to support the students in the universities. Now, where a parent was vulnerable, was not able to support the student or to be able to pay the initial or the amount that was due for programs, we realized that a number of students who are admitted to the high-cost programs such as medicine, engineering, were dropping out because we were actually at that point funding parents as opposed to funding students, because we were means testing parents. What is the capacity of the parent to support the student and to what extent? So for some they would support up to 80%, for some 20%, then the other difference would be paid by the government, including scholarships and loans. Now, the main difference between the one that we are introducing is that we are not now testing the capacity of the parents. What we are saying is that we are availing enough resources, and each and every student who has been admitted by COOPs to the universities would be able to get funding for whatever course that they have been admitted. Now, what happened is we just changed the model from looking at what the parent can afford into looking at what we are funding. So, for example, if you get admitted to go and do law, it means you'll become a lawyer, right? So what are we funding? We are funding a lawyer. We are not funding the parent who is not a lawyer. Once we changed this, it was now possible for private sector to look at this funding as an investment. And when we had negotiations with the private sector, they said, if we look at it as funding a doctor, as funding a lawyer, as funding an engineer, as funding a teacher, then it becomes a bankable and fundable investment. So together with the money that the government is giving, in addition, we will be able to get resources from private sector to support the students themselves. So we then have enough money to support the students 100%. And it works this way. Once you are admitted by COOPs, you apply for the facility, it is given to you, you finish your course, you get employed. A year after employment, you start the repayment. Do you understand what I'm saying? You start the repayment a year after employment. There's a grace period from the time you get employed to the time you start paying. So this is the bill that we prepared so that we can now anchor this program in law to allow us to collect resources and to get the support from private sector and other development partners so that we have a pool of resources sufficient to cover each and every student who is admitted into the universities through COOPs. So this does several things. Number one, it equates all students. All students become equal. The MTI was based on equity. What are you able to get? But now every student is equal because you are able to apply for the loan or for the facility as each and everyone. Number two, it is adequate. Remember, we've said initially the government was releasing maybe up to 40%, and even after the MTI came and parents were not able to pay their fees, etc., etc. Now the funds are there. It's adequate. All right? It is available. So that when you report, the resources are available. Sometimes you had challenges that we had with the exchequer, the money is not coming on time, etc. That problem then is resolved. Because it's a facility that you will pay back, it then becomes sustainable. So looking forward comes a revolving fund. There are other mechanics behind there to ensure that these resources are collected. As we speak, those who get help, we have a collection rate of between 70 to 75% before we put in any mechanisms of collection. This particular bill has mechanisms input to ensure that you are going to be able to repay, and we anticipate that we'll have a repayment rate of about 85%. And if we have a repayment rate of 85%, we then have a sustainability of the fund. That is the difference. So for ease of understanding, the new model is funding the learner or the student and what the student would become, not the parent. Now we have removed the parent from the matrix so that all the students are equal. Number two, private sector is now funding or coming in to support this program, because now when you are supporting the future of the learner or the professional, it becomes a bankable investment program. We've tweaked that. That's why we've been talking, if you've listened to us, that education is an investment. It's no longer what it used to be, being looked at like just a social support system. It's now an investment, and we've had us say the biggest or the best investment that a country can do is in education. We've understood each other.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much.
And then, Waziri, just before you leave, will this new model apply to students who are supposed to be joining universities in September?
It will take effect immediately the bill comes into operation. So if the bill comes before September, then it will take up that point. If it comes after that. But at whatever level the bill becomes operational, we'll transition the students into that program. So we'll have a transition period. You don't need to worry about September. You proceed the way it is, but immediately the bill becomes law, we transition all the students into that fund.